Welcome to Music Matters Podcast with Daryl Craig Harris, talking about all things music with celebrities, artists, music business insiders, and more.
Mr. Eric Hirshberg, how are you doing today?
Very good. Very good to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So you have a new album coming out, Secondhand Smoke. You've released several singles that have done really well, streaming and platforms and such. And you have a really interesting history just in general with your work and your past businesses, and which we're going to touch on a little bit. I'm not going to dwell on it, but it's interesting. So, cool. So you were former CEO of Activision, which was the company responsible for Call of Duty, I think Guitar Hero, some other really huge games, but you've always been a musician as well. So tell me, let's going back to the start. I know you grew up in Detroit. How did you get interested in music, I guess, and gaming?
It's been an interesting path to here for me to this releasing my second album. I've been playing music and writing music since, for as long as I can remember. My parents made my brother and I pick an instrument when we were very young. I picked violin. And when I turned about 14 or 15, I wanted to play an instrument that with music I could relate to a little more. So I switched to the bass guitar. I found that violin was so difficult that any other stringed instrument came very easily to me. And also I have learning disabilities. I struggled with dyslexia when I was a kid, so I had a hard time reading music, which made me really good at learning by ear. And there's a funny story where my dad was an epic, he was also a musician, but he has a huge classical music collection. I used to sneak into his records and find the piece I was supposed to be learning and learn it by ear. And then I got caught when I didn't turn the sheet music at the right moment. And my teacher was like, "What are you reading?"
She's like, aha.
And I think I burst into tears because I thought I was in trouble because, I wasn't being honest, but it actually kind of outed the problem. And, started the path to me, starting to tackle it, which of course, I have to an extent. So I've been writing songs since I was a teenager, and my brother and I had my first band together in high school, and then he's 2 years older than me. And then I continued and had a band all through high school, all through college. I continued playing shows and playing in a live band well into my 20s, probably way longer than a career coach would have advised was, smart, because
that happens to the best of us.
Yeah. And, I played the clubs around LA and San Diego and Southern California. But in the meantime, this whole other career was taking over my life, first in advertising. And I had a great career in advertising as a creative and eventually as a CEO. I built an agency here in LA with a wonderful partner called Deutsch LA, and it grew into a real juggernaut. We won Agency of the Year from Adweek or AdAge, which are the two main publications that cover that, like 6 times during my time there. So it was a real, it was a phenomenal run, and that led to me. Well, we actually had the Sony PlayStation account. And we did a really good campaign for PlayStation.
That's a pretty good one to have.
And yeah, it was fun. And I love video games. But it also got the attention of some people in the video game space, because we helped turn around, the performance of one of PlayStation's consoles. And the marketing was really well regarded and kind of credited with helping to do that. And then I just happened to meet a guy named Bobby Kotick, who was the chairman and basically the founder of modern Activision, at a common friends dinner party. And we hit it off, and that led to 2 years of conversations. I turned down a couple of job offers that he threw my way, but eventually he said, "I figured out how I'm going to get you to come work for me. You're going to come be the CEO of Activision." And then I built the agency that I was working. I was very happy. I wasn't really looking to leave, but it was kind of an incredible opportunity. And so I was the CEO of Activision, which is the biggest division of Activision Blizzard, and now includes King, who makes Candy Crush. So just an incredible company and an incredible learning experience for me. I was very pleased that, I always considered myself a creative first, and I sort of became a CEO by accident because I was, having success in a creative industry.
Right. And you were good at what you did.
Yeah, I was good at what I did. And so, I was sort of metaphorically the singer that the rest of the band pushed to the front of the stage at the ad agency. But I was very pleased to find out that leadership is leadership. The creative process is the creative process, even though the process of making video games couldn't be more different from the process of making commercials. The creative process is fairly universal. And so is leadership. And so there were things I had to learn. There was a very technical job, complex software. It was publicly traded. There was Wall Street analysts we had to talk to
all that stuff.
Weeks. Yeah. And there's a book somewhere on this shelf called Reading Financial Reports for Dummies. I literally bought, as a dyslexic creative person, you can imagine I was a little intimidated at the notion of, okay, so these are Wall Street analysts. These are going to be big left brain.
Right. This is going to hurt my brain.
And I don't know any of these acronyms or, you know. So I read that in the time between when I, gave notice at Deutsch and when I started it at Activision. I walked in my first day and I knew some of the catchphrases and stuff. But I didn't shy away from the fact that there was a learning curve for me to climb, and I really enjoyed it. Learning new things in the middle of your career is really fun. And so, I had a great year run as the CEO of Activision, but the music never subsided. It never, at some point, I thought it would degrade itself to kind of a hobby status, something I did when I could.
It's interesting with the musicians, because we were just talking before we started that, I have a bunch of different jobs that I do. You've done several different things, but what you said, the creative process and how you get things done is a universal thing.
It's pretty universal.
And once you learn that, it's super valuable. Right?
It is valuable because you realize your skills are somewhat portable. There's always, you have to respect that different crafts have different rules and different, things that make them special. But there are some things that you can take with you anywhere, that if you know how to lead a band, you know how to lead a creative, organization, essentially.
Yeah. You know how to herd cats, right?
Yeah. But so that whole time, that whole sort of other career, which has been wonderful and which I have no regrets about, and which, has been an incredible series of experiences for me. During that whole time, I was writing songs. I don't know how much daylight was between me and someone who writes songs full time, but they were piling up, at a fairly, high velocity. Every year there would be a new pile of songs that I had written and recorded in a room like this. I always had a,
studio.
It started as a walk-in closet and and guest room. And now there's, an actual dedicated room in my house. But, but it just sort of never became that side project, level thing. It always felt a little unmanageable. It would always lead to me staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning on work days and going with too little sleep, because I'd come home and my form of de-stressing at the end of the day was to pick up my guitar, and then I'd be like, "Ooh, that's good," and then I'd be like,
and it's therapy.
Throw down a track, and then it's like,
therapy for your brain, right?
So I just kind of kept doing it, and then the other thing that happened is I didn't feel this way when I was at the ad agency, because that was a creative job first. I was the chief creative officer as well as the CEO, and so it felt more on brand to have this side passion of songwriting. So I did put out one EP while I was running the
I would say too, like even video gaming, but also ad agency music is right there. I mean, that's a partnership with all the ads
too. Right. But once I became the CEO of a big organization like Activision, that
public company, all that,
company, all that, and I was one of the officers, I didn't feel comfortable putting out my music. And so it became kind of almost like a weird secret second life. And I had this moment where a friend, very close friend, probably one of the closest friends I'd made at Activision, brilliant guy named Humam Sakinini, was over at my house. I think it was a cocktail party. He saw a guitar in the corner. And this is like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years after we had started working together. And he said, "Oh, who plays guitar?" And I was like, whoa, like, dude, have I not ever shared that with you? Like,
you're really good at hiding your passion.
Yeah. And this is someone who was not just like a work mate. This is someone who had become a close personal friend. And I realized, wow, you really have hidden this from view. And that was kind of a weird moment for me, where I felt like, my true self had sort of fissured.
Right.
And so
the Wizard of Oz came out from hiding.
After I left Activision, and stepped down and decided I kind of wanted to rewire and rebalance my life, the first thing I wanted to do was put out an album. And that
Awesome.
was just where, I'm not a golfer. I don't play tennis.
Right.
I just wanted to make music and make it with great people and try to, give it the moment in the sun that I feel like it deserved. And I didn't know what would happen. Honestly, I was terrified because I don't know. I felt like people would want to hate it. Given my business background being known
Yeah,
as,
it's tricky with that, right? Because you almost don't want to tell people, but then again, it's a big part of who you are. It's a big part of it influences your songwriting.
yeah, it's
So
the other half.
that's always that kind of that thing. Like if you have a famous parent, like do you use their name or do you go out and throw it? It's a tricky thing, right?
So there's been a kind of double joy for me. There's the joy that all musicians feel, which is that making music, playing music with other people, playing it in front of other people, and putting it out into the world and having an audience find it and appreciate it is amongst the greatest joys there is. I just find it to be an incredibly joyful activity. And then there's this second joy, which is kind of reintegrating these different parts of myself and being my whole self in public view for the first time since I was a much younger person. So
yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that. I said, it's sort of like using both your arms and legs. Like, why would you tie an arm behind your back, right?
Yeah, and I think
it's all your
in
attributes.
hindsight, it might have been all in my head. I don't know whether it was that important for me to hide, but I just wasn't comfortable, and like I said, no regrets. But now I've got the opportunity to be putting music out and to be trying to build an audience, which is slowly but surely, sort of happening, and getting some, there's people out there who like it. So that feels really good.
Yeah, it's, I was checking out the album last night. It actually comes out, I think today, right?
Comes out
13th.
today. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So good timing for us.
Yes. Thank you.
And I know you had released, I think, singles before, which have done really well on the streaming platforms. What made you decide to do it that way? And actually, I would say it seems to be now more common for people just to really focus on singles.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that was my brainstorm. I got that advice directly from someone that I reached out to, just via the Spotify for Artists platform, who works inside Spotify. And my original plan was I was going to put out 3 or 4 singles and then release the album. I'm a 20th century animal. I still care about albums.
I do too.
And I still care about what order the songs are in and think about it that way. And, Secondhand Smoke is not like a concept album. It's not Pink Floyd The Wall, but it's got some common, there's some common threads throughout all the songs, and they hang together as
it has a vibe overall.
Yeah,
you feel
from a production standpoint and certainly from a lyrical standpoint, there are some similar topics that, are explored on multiple songs. And so I cared about it as an album, but this person said, look, the algorithm that, kind of governs this world now.
The influence algorithm.
Yes. We all work for the algorithm. Now, I don't remember accepting the job, but
right.
Here we are.
Where's that contract?
Yeah, exactly. He says that the algorithm really, it rewards constancy and recency. So if you have 9 songs, create 9 release events. And that's 9 times for people who are following you to be served new content and to be reminded, and to, for others, it shows up on new songs out this week lists and hopefully some curated lists. And, I've gotten some good response on that sort of thing. And so more and more people discover you, the more events, the more release events you have.
Because you want people to hear this baby that you created. You want them to see it and feel it. And
I didn't like that idea, but I just wanted to do, I want, like all artists, you want to make it until you're happy with it. And then you want as many people to find it and experience it as possible. So I released 9 songs, 1 per month for the last 9 months. And there are 9 songs on the album. The 9th one released today, along with the whole album. So now for the other 20th century animals like us who care about albums, there is an album out there called Secondhand Smoke that you can experience from start to finish and listen to in the order that I, intended. But for everyone else who listens to singles and who, consumes music in a more modern way, it worked for them too. And I also came out with a vinyl record, which launches today as well.
Awesome.
Which I'm going to sell at my release show at the Hotel Cafe this Sunday. If you're in LA, this Sunday, the 15th at 7 p.m. So, there are a couple of different ways to experience the album in its entirety, but I also tried to do it in as modern and, effective a way as possible.
Yeah, it's a great album, and It's very classic. I almost want to say Americana, but it's really interesting, and there's a lot going on. Who are like some of your influences, the people that you grew up really admiring songwriter wise?
Oh,
I know
well,
that's a big question, I'm sure. But
it's a big question. The ones who I'll start with just sort of the ones that have been with me the longest. Tom Waits,
yep.
Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler. I think he's a great songwriter, but I think he's a particularly great, obviously guitar player. And I love their production. Somehow the Dire Straits have this ability to sound big and still sound intimate. And I aimed for that with this record as well, where it's clearly, intimate, human scale storytelling with
That's exactly what I felt. Yeah.
harmonies, but there are also places where it gets a little more cinematic and a little more, has a little more scale. And I think I always love bands who can pull that off. Bruce Springsteen's a huge influence. And then, I love, Lumineers, Dawes, Blind Pilot, Bon Iver. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ray LaMontagne, all the modern kind of singer-songwriters, Conor Oberst, Phoebe Bridgers. And
the big voices.
Yeah, that's kind of the top of the mountain that I am scaling,
Yeah, well, that's a good mountain.
Yeah.
And Tom Waits, guys like Tom Waits and Bruce, what I like about them, as you mentioned, is that they can do the big band thing, the big huge thing, but they can also sit down with their guitar. Exactly.
Yeah, the scale never takes over and it never becomes just a stadium anthem. It's always a human story. And so, obviously, I don't know what to call that genre. Some people call it Americana, some people call it folk, folk rock, alternative. But that's the stuff I listen to most. But I also have a wide eclectic palette. I love neoclassical. I love Ludovico Einaudi and Tony Anderson. I love hip hop. I love all pop, everything.
Yeah, we're the same with that, and I think it's fun to like explore and find new
totally.
people and genres. And what's your feeling on collaboration? Have you worked with other songwriters? And obviously you worked with the producer, or was this self-produced?
This album was self-produced. My first album was produced by John Alasia, who again is kind of as a producer, kind of on the top of the mountain that I'm scaling. He's produced, the likes of Dave Matthews and Jason Mraz. And I'm lucky enough to be close friends, not through music. We met completely through social, just through common friends. But I'm a good friend with Liz Phair. And she was an early both supporter and honest critic of my music. When I got up the guts to tell her that I was a songwriter, I'm obviously a huge fan of hers.
Right.
I was a little intimidated but I think actually my wife blurted it out at a dinner party. Like, what are you going to tell her that you write songs too?
Hey, check out my demo.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh my God. And I could see when I first played her, I think it was wasn't in this room, but it was in, the place we lived previously and the sort of equivalent of this room. And I remember the look of relief on her face.
That was good.
Like, cause we were friends, and
right.
when I first played it, she's like, okay, he's not tone deaf, like there's something here. But, she kind of leaned in and she said, there's something here, and then immediately switched to, what is this lyric about? I feel like you're pulling the punch. You're not being honest enough. There's some idea there, but you haven't gone far enough. What's this about? This chorus is, she just kind of gave a lot of great feedback. She's always been the most honest sounding board. So anyway, I met John Alasia through her. She brought John along with her to a dinner party, and we met and hit it off. And I was lucky enough that he agreed to produce my first record. This one started during COVID. So again, the self-produced thing was not anything I designed. It was sort of born out of necessity because I was like,
you're sitting at home and you have time to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's how this podcast started too. So.
Yeah, exactly. So John Alasia's approach was what he called a live studio album. This is from my first full-length record, Spare Room, where he said 90% of the production is about casting the right band and getting the right musicians around you. And then we're going to get in a room, we're going to play these songs a bunch of times, we're going to never turn the record button off, and we're going to find the magic. And so that album had very few overdubs. Of course, we went back and re-recorded vocals where we needed to and whatnot. But it was really, and you can feel it. You can feel that it was live. You can feel that there was spontaneity, and there was, you can hear the air between the mics in the room and feel the eye contact between the musicians. There's something magical about that that's very romantic and very human.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that by yourself playing all your instruments. I mean, there's a couple of guys that can do it, but it's rare, right?
Totally. But I did find there to be some unexpected advantages to the way I produced this record, which was more building a wall one brick at a time.
Right.
And the advantages to that were the other players had more time to sit with it. I didn't ask for this, but I tended to say, here's the way I'm hearing it, and maybe share a little bit of a production, spirit animal.
Right.
But without fail, they'd say, I tried it the way you said it, and I gave you a couple of takes but I also heard it this way. And then they'd come back with some left turn or some zag that I didn't anticipate. And almost without fail, those were better, and they made it better. So I feel like people having a little more time to wake up the next morning and it's still rattling around their head, and then they want to throw down an additional track. There's something magic about that too. So
and it's the power of collaboration too, right? Yeah. Because you hire, well, this from business world too. You hire the best people, then you allow them to do what they do.
Yes, exactly. And that's hard because you hear it in your head a certain way.
Right.
And if you're too domineering with that vision, you don't leave room, and you rob yourself of those other ideas. So you started by asking, how I feel about collaboration. It's my favorite thing in the creative process. I always feel like other people getting involved and putting their fingerprints on it and changing it almost always makes it better. I've almost never experienced the opposite.
Yeah. If you hire the right people and you trust them, and you build that, and it takes time sometimes to build the trust, but that's, again, that just ties back to regular business. That's a good approach, how you do things. Right?
And the number of people who played on this album, like Michael Chavez and Blair Cinta, are people I met through the first album. And so, those collaborations now have a few years on them, and
they're seasoned. Yeah.
You can talk telepathically a little bit. And so that's always good too. But, some of the songs really changed when I got other people involved. The first song on the album, Good Morning, in my mind's ear, it was a folk song. And I, kind of played this jangle. If you just listen to the acoustic guitar and the lead vocal, you hear how I was hearing it. And then Blair Cinta, brilliant drummer who I work with, he sent back this kind of, slapping snare, almost R&B, almost sounded like an Otis Redding song, the way he played it. And then that had a domino effect, because then I'm like, oh, I really like this, kind of treating this a little more R&B. So I'm like, what if we leaned into that? And does anyone know a great, singer who sounds like a gospel choir? And that's how I found Maya Sykes. And then Maya ended up singing on like 5 or 6 of the songs on the album, and is one of the sonic through lines. So none of that would have happened had I, demanded that Blair Cinta just give me a brush drum track and, make it sound like a folk song, which is the way I was hearing it.
Right. Yeah. It's great, and it's good to be like confident enough in yourself to allow other people to come up with ideas and be open to that. That's so important for artists, because sometimes we can be so focus driven that you kind of forget, like, hey, other people have good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can uplift your project, right?
Absolutely. And as far as collaborations too, I should mention, I had 2 amazing guest performers on the album. Aloe Blacc sang with me on I Love Not Drinking. That happened, again, super organically. We didn't know each other, but we were both playing at the same event. And I was kind of the opener of the day, and he was the closer of the day. And the curator of that event, which is called the Near Future Summit, great conference it's in Malibu every year. The curator of that event knew that Aloe was a non-drinker as well. And when she sent him the song, so you got to hear this, and, copied us on a group text. He's like, this is great. And then it turned into like, you want to sing it with us? And at first it was like, do you want to sing it with us today? Which he did. And that was cool. And then afterwards, I already had the song mixed and mastered and done. And I just kind of went for it. And I said, you interested in coming over and laying down a track? I'll reopen the mix for you. And so, oh my God, did it get better when his voice was involved, and, that whole vocal solo would never have been there. And then the other one is I'm good friends with Dave Cause. And at the end of Good Morning.
Yeah, Dave's great.
Yeah, he's amazing. And, we were jamming. This is after COVID was over. We were jamming with me, Blair Cinta in the drum room here, and Matt Rubano, our bassist. We were actually laying tracks down together. And, Matt said, boy, it really feels like there should be a solo at the end of this. And then we started brainstorming. Is it a guitar solo? Is it a honky tonk piano? And someone said saxophone. And then we started talking about who do you know who could play it? And they knew a bunch of good players. And I go, like, yeah, I'm actually good friends with Dave Koz. And they're like,
that would be the guy.
Yeah, okay, we can end this conversation now.
Right.
And he's in such a different genre. He's a jazz musician. I kind of didn't think of, because this is like a real rock and roll, sax.
Right, sure, yeah.
But boy, he had fun with it. He came in, he gave us 3 takes. We could have used any one of them unedited. And he said afterwards, like, this is fun. I never get to play rock and roll like this. So,
yeah,
that's
awesome. And I mean, again, the album sounds great.
Thank you.
That's really cool. I love the vibe. And that's the thing. Like you said, the album thing is just a different animal because you can really get deep into it. I always think of like Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, or those albums.
Yeah.
That it's like it takes you on a journey. What's your advice? I mean, obviously you come from a lot of different worlds, and the business world ties in obviously with music and music business world. What's your big advice to creators, maybe young creators, songwriters? What's some of the biggest things that you've learned along the way that you think would be important for them to know?
God, I don't know that I feel that I've achieved enough as a musician to be someone giving other people advice. I'm always the one looking for advice in this world.
And I mean, because obviously from your business standpoint too, because you've dealt with sound placements, you've dealt with all that kind of stuff. So
no, I appreciate it. I mean, I can only give the advice of the things that have, somewhat worked for me, but I just want to say it with all humility that this is, something that I feel like I'm at the very beginning of. And, I don't know that I'm, at the point in my career where I should be bestowing advice, because I don't know if what I'm doing is working yet. But the first advice is just keep going. I always feel like I've worked in 2 different creative industries, and the ability to execute, the ability to follow through and bring something to completion, that in and of itself is a superpower. A lot of people have creative ideas and aspirations, and then this many of them ever actually make something and finish it. And then this many ever actually have the guts to put it out into the world and have it be judged.
Creative ideas.
Just the ability to execute and to finish something and to bring it to completion is a superpower in any creative endeavor, because we all press our noses up against the canvas and start to lose the whole picture. And, there are a lot of people in the world who have creative ability. There are a lot of people in the world who have a creative idea or creative aspirations. There aren't many who ever actually finish. There's this many who want to do something. There's this many who actually finish something. And then there's this many who ever actually say, I'm going to put this out into the world and have it be judged and bear myself, lay myself bare in front of the world. So just keep going. That's what's worked for me. And then the only other advice, that I already told you the thing that the guy inside Spotify told me, which is, put things out consistently and put them out one at a time. And I also think that there's real value to, at least in this modern landscape. My first album, I did these very cinematic music videos that looked like they could have run on MTV when I was a kid. They felt like little mini movies, and I like them, but I feel like on this video, my creative director friend and photographer and cinematographer Josh Rose, who's one of my closest friends, but is a brilliant photographer and cameraman, he gave me the advice this time. He's like, I just think people want to see the process. I think they want to just sort of be in the room with you. And I don't know that we need to go. He directed all the videos from the last album too. He says, I don't know that we need the big concept. Like, let's just find a beautiful location, find some beautiful, a setting, and get the magic of making the music is what will be most compelling. So that kind of intimacy and willingness to invite people into your process and not be so polished, I think is a good way to go too.
Yeah, I think people want to feel your heart in the music, and that's the thing. So if anything that gets in the way of that is to be like pushed away and just really focus on, like you said, you feel that in the music, you feel that in the album, that your heart's in it, and there's a connection there. So that's really awesome.
Thank you. The only other thing I'd say is that the music industry, it's like, I don't even know if there is a music industry for independent artists. It's like saying there's a poetry industry.
Exactly right.
It's like I don't know that this is industrialized. Everything that used to be, there used to be a team of people that all has transferred to the artist. So you're not only writing songs now, you're your own music video producer and editor, you're your own social media manager, your own data scientist, trying to figure out what made this one work and this one not work. I have no idea. There's a post on my Instagram feed that got 5 million views, and I have no idea why. It's not different from, it's like chorus 2 of track 7 from the album. It's kind of looks the same as all the other ones. It's in the same style. It's got the same lyric animation. There's no active ingredient I can find that made that one go viral. And so, you can drive yourself nuts going like, what happened?
I think that's exactly right, because I do a lot of social media stuff too. And I think what you kind of have to come to is just, I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to do it the best I can, and let the rest sort itself out, because there's so much you can't control. and also, it'll drive you crazy as an artist, right?
I think you just said something really important, which is I think the hardest advice to follow, just for myself, but I know it's really good advice, is don't let the algorithm seep into your brain so that you start thinking about it when you're creating. Like, make things that you love, make things that you're proud of. If you can start driving yourself nuts going like, oh, this one worked better than this one, so I'm going to write more like this. And then suddenly it's like I said, I don't work for
it becomes inauthentic, which is, it's important to find your center. Yeah.
You put it out and it either connects or it doesn't. And, give it every chance, promote it. That's why you and I are talking. I want as many people to hear it as possible. But at the end of the day, people will either connect with it or they won't. But you won't get anywhere if you're not making stuff that's authentic to you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Super important point. And that's true not only in music, but just in life.
Yeah, it is.
Be authentic. You're going to attract authentic people to you and fans. And that's what you want. Yeah.
Yes. And it's the only thing that you'll be proud of at the end of the day. If something connects, of course, that's great from a commercial standpoint. But even if it doesn't, if you're proud of it and you're proud to play it for anyone, that's the deathbed, that's the deathbed stuff that you're going to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Eric, how can people find you? I know obviously social media and all that kind of stuff. Let us know how they can.
Yeah. So I've got a website, erichirshbergmusic.com. And I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Of course, the better is find me on Spotify, find me on Apple Music, Amazon Music, Tidal, whatever.
All the usual.
Follow. You can buy the album, the vinyl album, or the CD, or download the tracks, so you have your own copy of the digital tracks off my website. And that's the best way to support is, follow on a music platform. I've had this experience where people who clearly are being genuine, they go, oh, I really liked your new song. And I go, great. And then just being the curious, I'm thinking commercially, where'd you listen to it? Oh, on Instagram. And I'm like, you haven't heard my song. You heard 30 seconds of it. So, those aren't real music platforms. They're promotional platforms. So, if there's music fans out there and you want to support the artists that you like, go find them on a music platform, even YouTube, that promotes music and that is a place where you can listen to the whole thing.
Yeah. And it's great to mention that too, because people do forget that. We have such a short attention span these days.
And we
like,
give away
the song
so
and it's like,
you give away so much through the promotion process in these little snippets because we've bent the music into the length and the shape and the, that Instagram needs or that,
right.
But that's not the way you originally intended it to be considered.
Yeah, you want them to see that. You want them to see the full baby, not just the head.
Well,
by creation. Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. You have such an interesting background. The music's awesome. I really enjoyed listening to the album. I encourage everybody to check it out. And like you said, give you a follow because that's, we want to see what you do in the future as well. Not only what's happening now. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much. It's a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And I will include all your links and everything else in the post on Apple Podcasts and all of other outlets. So Have a great day, Eric.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us, and please consider subscribing to our podcast and follow us on our social media pages for guest announcements.